So what we're going to do in this video is now that we have our frequency distribution table on Excel, we could go ahead and create graphs so that we don't have to plot them ourselves and create them ourselves. So if you go ahead and open up an Excel spreadsheet, this is our raw data, the number of calories per serving. Here's all my values. So go ahead and enter those in to your Excel spreadsheet. It goes all the way down to 130. So feel free to pause and put those into your Excel spreadsheet. Next, we're going to put our least and our greatest. The least is 80. Our greatest is 270 according to my data. After that, we go to step 3, and that's something called bin. So bin basically represents your class limits. So I want my class limits to start a little under 80 and go up a little more than 270. So a little less than 80, I'm going to go 10 under, so I'm going to go 70. And if I go up by ones, that's a lot of values to try to make it up to 270. If I go by twos, that's a lot. Threes, fives. So I'm going to go by 20s. So 70 to 90 to 110 all the way down to 290. Now if you notice here to the right, here's my frequency distribution table. Go ahead and input this in to your Excel spreadsheet. Now the other team knows how to do this frequency distribution table on a program called Stat Plus. So what you're going to do is when you go into class, they'll be able to teach you how to get this from the program so you don't have to always calculate it yourself and input it in yourself. Now we got our midpoint. That I calculated myself. We've got our class limits 70 to 90 all the way down to 250 to 270. We got our frequency count. So on the chart it gives them count, but that's your frequency. That's how many. Each number hits in between those values. Your cumulative frequency, the same thing as cumulative count. They're the same thing. Your percent, another word for it is relative frequency. We calculated that in class. And your cumulative percent is another word for cumulative relative frequency. So now we have those values. Let's go ahead and start creating our graphs. So the first one that we want to do is our histogram. Our histogram deals with our boundaries, but we're going to be using our class limits and our frequency. So you're going to highlight the class limits starting with number of calories per serving. Press the command button and you want to highlight your frequency, which is the count. You don't have to highlight frequency, just put the count. I put those on the top just for you to know what those words actually mean. Next, so because this is a bar graph, you're going to go to the columns and you want to create clustered columns. There's your histogram. The next one that we're going to do, we're not going to do the midpoint one with the frequency polygon because it's the same thing. We're always going to use the histogram. It makes no sense to do it. So the next one we're going to do is the ogive. The ogive deals with your boundaries or your class limits, and it deals with your cumulative frequency. So you're going to press the command button, go cumulative count all the way down. Now the ogive is a line graph. So you're going to go to the line, press the first one, line. There you go. That's my ogive. Now, just how we did in class, we're going to be dealing with relative frequency and relative cumulative frequency. Now, the reason why we do relative is just because some class limits might have a different distribution than others. We deal with proportions. Now, if the proportions are correct and they are spread out evenly, then we should have the same graphs even if we do relative or regular frequency. So let's go ahead and create a histogram for relative frequency. So we're going to go class limits, command button, and we're going to go the relative frequency. Now remember that's a bar graph, so we're going to go column, bar graph. If you notice, they're the same thing. Put that up here. It's the same as before, but the values here are different. Right? Here it was all spread out. Here I'm using with proportions, so they're scattered between 0 and 1. Here you have a whole bunch of numbers that go up really high. So this still basically shows you the same distribution, but it's brought down to a smaller scale between 0 and 1. Now we're also going to do an ogive with cumulative relative frequency. So we're going to go class limits, and we're going to go cumulative relative frequency. And we're going to go line graph. Again, if you notice, they basically follow the same concept. Alright, this is still strict between 0 and 1. These values go up all the way up to 50. So this we use relative when we're dealing with proportions just to help us see our graphs a little better. And that's all.